Hi, friends. Be aware because we are discussing sexual wellness in this episode. Please take a listen for yourself before you decide to share it with a younger audience. Welcome to the Functional Medicine Foundations podcast, where we explore root cause medicine, engage in conversation with functional and integrative medicine experts, and build community with like-minded health seekers. I'm your host, Amber Warren. Let's dig deeper. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm here with Tammy Hadfield, our newest women's health nurse practitioner, with a lot of other credentials behind her name. With over 30 years in women's health, Tammy began her journey as a registered nurse, eventually earning her master's in nursing and becoming a board-certified women's health nurse practitioner. Her impressive career includes military service, where she earned accolades as the Meritorious Service Medal, and pioneering work in hormone replacement and age management medicine, specializing in bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for men and women, gynecological health, and age management medicine. Tammy founded Embrace Wellness in 2009. Now she joins the FMI Center for Optimal Health, continuing her work in hormone optimization, sexual wellness, and more. Outside of her professional life, Tammy enjoys traveling, gardening, cooking, and spending time with her family. Welcome. We're so glad to have you, not only on the podcast, but in clinic.
Thank you.
You've been with us 4 weeks now.
Yeah, just over a month.
Oh my gosh, it's been so fun
exciting
to have just your area of expertise and
Thank you.
your knowledge and your wisdom and your passion and compassion. And we're just so
Thank you.
excited to have you as a part of the team.
I'm happy to be here.
Yay. Okay, so
much fun.
Good. So we just want to jump into kind of all things women's health. I don't think there could be enough spoken about this topic, right? I mean,
How much time do we have?
I know, exactly. Yeah, we can't spend all night, but there's so many good tidbits that I know you're going to bring to our community and to our audience. So let's just, I don't think we've talked so much about hormone imbalances on this podcast, but let's just go ahead and dive in. Like, what are the primary female hormones and their functions?
Well, I think if you just basically talk about the two major ones, estrogen and progesterone, everybody knows, they hear about it. The thing that I like to explain to patients, though, is that we kind of villainize estrogen. We make it sound like it's bad to be estrogen dominant. It's something that we say to patients all the time. We talk about it. But the reality is that we are supposed to be estrogen dominant the first half of our cycle. If we weren't, we wouldn't produce a lining. We wouldn't be able to have a menstrual cycle.
That's our physiology. That's our innate physiology.
We have to have that. So we have to have some estrogen. The problem is that we have so many environmental things that increase our estrogen levels that we don't want. And they're bad estrogens. They're not ones that really help. Right. They disrupt things. Progesterone, of course, we need. Progesterone, unfortunately, declines as we age. And so we lose progesterone. But progesterone is what helps us not to have to deal with so much of our PMS symptoms and kind of keep our menstrual cycles regulated. I always tell patients estrogen is there at the beginning of the month to build up your cycle. Progesterone is supposed to step in and tell that lining to stay there till the end of the month. And then we drop both of them, and then the cycle starts over again. But then we also have the other two major ones that I look at with patients are testosterone levels, because we are supposed to have some testosterone. Right. It's not just a male hormone.
Right. Just different amounts.
Just different amounts, exactly. Yeah. Way different amounts. And then DHEA is one of my other favorite ones that I like to look at with women. Yep. In my younger population, it's mainly the other ones that I'm looking at versus DHEA. Just depends on the patient.
I love it. So I feel like we can't skip over or minimize one of the first things you said, which was talking about these xenoestrogens, these chemicals and toxins and structures in our environment that look like estrogen, but they're not. I think it's really important for our listeners to know what are some of the top xenoestrogens that are impacting this estrogen dominance that you see in clinical practice, that you're concerned about.
Well, kind of depends on where the patient's coming from. I think in our area, because I have so many clients that come from farming areas, I'm always talking to them about pesticides. Yes. Pesticides are, the more organically they can eat, the better. But the unfortunate thing is that we step outside and you're going to get hit with them. And so it was really interesting. I always love this story about, we're always concerned about animals and we want to know what's going on with them. There was actually a population of frogs that was going to be extinct along the Mississippi River, one of the dirtiest rivers we know of in the United States. Why? Because all of our farming community, irrigation water goes in it. So this species of frog was being extinct because of biologically it was female. And physiologically, it was male, and it was being extinct because its hormones were disrupted. That pesticide got outlawed but we don't look at the ones that are there for humans. Like, we don't pay attention to that. Right. So pesticides, I think in our community is a big one, but there's so many more. Everything from our skincare products. We always talk about the BPAs. We're always talking about, try to stay away from plastics and microplastics. And there's tea bags. I didn't realize that tea bags have microplastics in it. So anything that they can do to keep clean. I know there's several websites and different things. I mean, we're always referring to those for patients to look at, they can take a snapshot of their product and see what kind of chemicals are in it and which ones they're going to try to stay away from.
Right. So you touched on this a little bit, Tammy. How do hormones regulate the menstrual cycle?
How do they regulate it?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about a menstrual cycle, the first day of your menstrual cycle, all your hormones are going to go to zero in order to signal that lining to shed. That first half of your cycle, estrogen is supposed to start kicking in, building up the lining. It peaks right before ovulation. We want it to do that. So obviously very estrogen dominant at that time. That's to get the lining nice and fluffy, ready for implantation if we were to have ovulation and basically pregnancy occur. We want something that progesterone is supposed to kick in, tell that lining to stay there. If we get pregnant, progesterone goes up significantly to maintain that lining for a pregnancy. So when we don't conceive, of course, 14 days later after ovulation, we are supposed to signal a cycle to start. So those hormones fluctuate and change all throughout our lifetime. And after every single pregnancy, we have less progesterone production. We have to reset our hormones after pregnancy. We get into our mid-30s, we start having a steady decline in our progesterone levels. And then, of course, you get into your 40s, and then estrogen levels start getting a little bit more erratic, not as steady. And we can see things like heavier periods, development of fibroids, more PMS, more irritability. Those are some of the things that start giving us a good idea that our hormones may be off, especially like breakthrough bleeding is another one. And sometimes we just talk it about, that's just, being a woman and these things are supposed to happen, but they really are a sign that we've got a hormonal imbalance that's going on.
And what are some of the initial ways you start to treat some of those hormonal imbalance? What are your favorite ways to start?
Usually if it's a younger patient who comes in, when I'm looking at what's going on, if it's a lot of PMS, progesterone's my favorite.
Oh, it works so well.
It's the happy hormone.
It is the happy hormone. Yeah, and I don't think that's out there enough on how safe, not only its efficacy, but how safe it is.
Well, the problem is that many providers, when they're educating their clients or their patients, traditional medicine interchanges the words progestin and progesterone, and they are so vastly different. A micronized natural progesterone mimics your own chemical structure, reacts very differently in the body. We know that synthetic progestins, which are one of the brand names it's marketed under, is Provera. Provera, I hate to say it, we call it the witchy pill.
Right.
It causes fluid retention, it causes migraines, it causes weight gain, it causes severe irritability, and I don't want to give it to anybody. Right. It also has a 2.8% increased risk in breast cancer associated with it. So
why is it still on the market?
That's my question. I mean, we knew this 20 plus years ago, and we still are prescribing it and giving it to patients. But again, it's also, they interchange those words, and so when someone is educating, or a physician sometimes is even educating a client about it, they're like, oh, stay away from it, it's bad, you don't want to do it. But micronized natural progesterone, it can be a game changer for someone. It just, they feel like themselves again, just to have their irritability in check, like to be able to have a period show up and went, oh my gosh, I don't think I even had any PMS this month. That is so refreshing for a woman to not have to worry about that. Because we do, I mean, the thing that we worry most about is that when we're dealing with progesterone and progesterone is low, we also forget that it's affecting our neurotransmitters in our brain. And so there have been studies done. One of my favorite one that Dr. Daniel Amen had presented on was that he did brain spectrometry and looked at how the brain was firing off and at different stages in the menstrual cycle. And when the woman got to, especially in women with severe PMDD, which is a severe form of PMS, there was frontal lobe missing, like firing off. And we know our frontal lobe is what controls our impulse control. And I was explaining to women, it's like, do you ever have those moments where all of a sudden you feel like your head just spun around, you acted like somebody who is not even you, and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who that is. And that's that horrible, like, oh, well, what are you going to get treated with? Well, they're going to want to give you an antidepressant to keep your moods in check. And we need progesterone.
They really just need progesterone.
It's just sad when it doesn't... it isn't presented as an option for someone.
Well, and I think oftentimes too, yes, absolutely, those moments where you have that 30 seconds at home where you're like, why did I just lose it like that? Or why did I just say it like that? Like that was horrible. I think it can also be so subtle and how it starts to come on. I think we as women, forget that these hormonal fluctuations, perimenopause, about however you want to label it, can last 10 years.
Or longer.
Or really longer?
Longer, yeah. I always tell women, mid-30s is when we start having changes in our hormones. And especially depending on how many pregnancies that you have. A lot of women will come in and they're like, God, I just feel different since I had my last baby. I'm like, well, when was your last baby? And especially if you have that last baby around your mid-30s, that just can disrupt your hormones even more, because literally you're resetting your hormones after every pregnancy. It doesn't matter if it ends in a full-term pregnancy or if it was a miscarriage, we're still resetting our hormones. We're so hard on ourselves because we're always trying to, be able to be the best mom and be the best wife. Yeah. And these hormonal changes are happening and we feel kind of broken sometimes, like things are not working. Why am I acting like this? Well, I guess I need an antidepressant, and that's not always the answer.
What do you say to women that say, I don't want a medication, I don't want a pill? What are natural ways? Because I know you get this all the time. I get this all the time, and you treat so much more hormonal dysfunction than I do. So I'm so curious what you say to women that are like, well, what are the natural ways I can increase progesterone?
Well, first of all, I ask them, what is your definition of natural?
That's a great way to start. Great way to start.
Sometimes they're like, natural is just like, changing my foods or changing my exercise. That's the natural way of doing things. Is it adding in a supplement? Do you want to know about supplements, the things that help with hormone regulation? Or do you want a natural hormone? Right. And when we talk about natural hormones, it's so important for me to educate them, what is really a natural hormone? Is it something that's made from a yam or a plant source? There are things that are bioidentical that aren't always made from a plant source, but they're still bioidentical. And so having to explain to them what is a bioidentical hormone. Right. It just means that it mirrors and mimics your own cell structure, which are great. I love them because we can manipulate them so easily. Like if we have a problem with it, we don't have to wait weeks and weeks for something to happen. Right. I always tell patients, don't be afraid to start, because the worst thing that can happen is you go, oh my gosh, this isn't working for me. You stop it 3 days later, it's completely out of your system. You don't have to worry about a long-term side effect from it.
Yeah. Lifestyle modification to help improve progesterone. Because a lot of my patients, that's their version of natural, right? They want to think about, we kind of touched on environmental toxicity as it relates to estrogen dominance, but other ways to naturally increase progesterone in the day-to-day living.
Well, I think better thing is how do we keep things more in check from it being used up, right?
There you go. Well, that to me would be a way to naturally increase progesterone. Absolutely.
I think that you and I agree that you call them pillars, I call them cornerstones.
Love it.
And I always start with those. And I'm like, you have to have good sleep.
Yep.
You have to have proper nutrition.
Yep.
You have to have exercise, because we know that that's important in growth hormone levels and keeping things in check. And then I always talk about connectedness. And so without that, just simply having that connection with your partner or intimacy with your partner is going to reset your hormones. And I don't think most women realize that. They're usually too tired to even consider something like that. But we also have to talk about that. So nutrition is super, super important. The sleep is really important. I think we forget about those basics and we just want something to fix it. And we forget about, so sometimes when you tell the patient, these are the things I want you to work on, they're like, but wait, that's not what I was here for. It's like, but sometimes that's where we have to start.
Root cause, yeah.
Otherwise, no matter what we do with the hormones, I can hit you with all the hormones in the entire world, but if one of those cornerstones is out, it's never going to come into balance for you.
Right. Nutrition. What are for hormone balancing, right? What are your, top level? I know we can get really deep. You and I are not nutritionists. We have a wonderful team of nutritionists to support us. But I know you also have been focusing a lot lately in your career on trying to really be able to make some key recommendations. So what are your favorite recommendations to make regarding nutrition?
My favorite ones are to go back to asking him one question. And this goes back to estrogen metabolism in the body. Are you constipated?
Yes.
We don't talk about that.
Yes.
We don't even think about that in terms of hormones, but we have to remember that if you're not having a bowel movement every day, that's our way of excreting, the bad estrogen metabolites.
Well, and most people don't know, going back to what's your definition of constipation, right?
100%.
Well, how often are you fully eliminating? Oh, every couple of days. Wait, what?
What do you mean? Wait, what?
Yeah. So I do think it's almost reframing that question. Are you having a natural, normal bowel movement? By the way, this is what the Bristol stool chart looks like. This is a normal bowel movement every day, 1 to 2 times a day. And then most people are like, oh, no.
Yep.
So yeah, that is a driver of estrogen dominance.
And actually, it's really interesting how many women they're just considered that to be normal. Oh, it's just normal for me to only have 1 or 2 a week. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
So plants,
fiber. I'm big on plants.
I know you are. Fruits and vegetables.
Plants, fruits and vegetables. 3 cups of dense vegetables at least. Most people always tell me just 1. So I'm like, if we can get them to 3, I get excited. If we can get them to 4 to 5, that makes me even happier. Better. Because the fiber is so much needed to help with that metabolism.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
So important.
That's such great advice. Are you looking for high-quality supplements? FunMedShop.com is carefully curated by the wellness experts at Functional Medicine of Idaho. You'll find high-quality supplements to support your health and optimize your body's natural functions. Rooted in responsible sourcing and utmost commitment to purity ensures that you're getting products that are not only effective, but also safe and reliable. Plus, you'll find our own line, Functional Medicine Foundations, which is carefully formulated using the best ingredients available so you can trust that you're giving the body the support it needs. Visit funmedshop.com today and take the next step in your health journey. That's funmedshop.com. So we talked about what the hormones do in a normal cycle in our childbearing years. I want to backtrack a little bit because I struggle to treat pubertal females, to be honest with you. So I think they're a hard type of demographic of patient to treat. And you probably disagree because you're so good at hormones. But what is happening in these younger girls' bodies during puberty?
Well, one, hormones aren't always in balance at the very beginning. They're having erratic cycles. Yeah. We're dealing with, again, so many things in our environment, and nutrition in your adolescence is even so much more important than anything at this time because the nutrition, it was very frustrating. I remember years ago watching one of the doctors on one of the morning news shows, and she talked about the fact that when girls were starting to have puberty much younger because we have such good nutrition. And I about, oh my goodness, came out of my skin. I'm like, that is the opposite. Yeah. Because we have we have the SAD diet, the standard American diet. And so the adolescents and helping them with that, making sure that they're not they overdo it with sugar so much. And we know that has such an impact on their growth hormone levels and how things are being. We also know that this is going to get into all the crazy stuff about hormones. We know that environmentally hormones are shifting so much in young women and men, young boys as well.
Yeah, we can't leave them out.
No, when we're dealing with the hormones, because just their way of interacting with one another is changing so much. And by that, we know that when you're looking at girls being more aggressive, being more, girls are getting into more of the bullying than ever. And we're not talking just verbally, we're talking physically. There is a shift in hormones that is going on that is helping perpetuate that. They even know that when you look at crimes of passion versus violent crimes and where the testosterone levels are in men and what we're seeing there. So there's an environmental shift with everything. I still think it goes back to a lot of our nutrition and probably all those other xenoestrogens and everything else that's in our environment. 100%. There's just a lot.
And we don't have to take this too far, but to talk about males, the demasculinization of males, we've talked about that as a group of providers, right? Like, yeah, we want to blame culture, and culture for sure is to blame, but you can't ignore the physiology changes that are happening at that level because of the hormonal changes. I mean, the frog example you gave is a perfect example of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so I think it is really, so many parents, I think, need to be more aware of that because there's this whole mental health conversation going on, but not enough of this conversation going on. So what do you really need to remove and put in the home to start to help your kids?
This is a whole other subject. We
should do a whole nother topic.
It is very interesting. Because the whole reason why I got into also seeing males, because even though I'm a women's health nurse practitioner, my secondary board certification is in anti-aging medicine. And this is where it came about because I watched what was going on with my own husband. And we didn't know what exactly was happening when it happened. I joined the military. I went into a very male-dominant position. He became the stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
I did not realize how much stay-at-home parenting affects a man's testosterone. Because he is constantly in caregiving mode, the oxytocin is much higher and the testosterone levels start dropping. And the only way to counterbalance that is to have him do masculine things.
Oh my gosh, that is so fascinating.
It is.
So tell her, for our listeners, what's oxytocin?
Oxytocin is the nurturing, loving hormone. It is the hormone that women produce in order to contract the uterus to go into labor. But then it is also the hormone that gets released when we put a baby to breast and we nurse the baby. We release oxytocin so that we want to love and nurture our child. It is also the hormone that we release when we orgasm. And we do that because we want to love and nurture our partner.
Right.
So that whole oxytocin also is stimulated by nurturing a child, and you put a male in a nurturing a child. And we want our husbands nurturing our children, right?
For sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
But when it becomes their primary job, that affects their testosterone levels.
So you started to witness that in your husband.
Oh my goodness, yes. He went from being the most like going and getting projects done to sitting on the couch. And I was like, what's going on? He goes, I'm just not interested. I'm like, what? I don't understand what's going on. And the sad thing with him is that with his hormones, of course, with any male hormones, there's such a big wide range. And if you follow anywhere in that range, they're going to tell you you're normal.
It's insane.
It's insane. We're talking a 17-year-old to a 70-year-old. And if you follow anywhere in there, you're normal. For a 40-year-old, they shouldn't be a 70-year-old's level.
How did you fix that?
Well, he started having to do hormone replacement
I was going to
therapy.
say there's probably only one way.
And mask it and doing things. I mean, we turned a whole new leaf in our relationship where I started letting him open the door for me again. I let him drive. I don't drive the vehicle. He drives the vehicle. I know they seem like small little things, but if you ever look into, I don't know if you remember John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Oh, yes.
Love him.
Yes.
But those were the little things that he had talked about in a lot of his books and teachings, is that you need to allow men to be men, and so that their testosterone levels. So like let him go out there and like decompress after work. He needs to decompress for 20 minutes after work. So why? Sitting in the recliner increases testosterone levels. I know that sounds weird, but he uses it up all day long, so we have to reboot it. So.
Yeah. And similarly, there's books like James Dobson wrote a book called Bringing Up Boys. I mean, I have 3 boys, so I'm focused on that. It's a phenomenal book about, just little things like when my husband goes to put them to bed and it sounds like an earthquake's going on upstairs because there's a wrestling match and I come and stop it because I think he's getting them all riled up. No, that is boys.
Being
just
boys.
Embracing their physiology and being boys and making that connection and starting to raise testosterone. And it's like, those are innate things that little boys need to do, you
Absolutely.
know? Or there's another book, Wild at Heart. I can't remember the author of that, but it is all about boys let them be wild, let them roam. And we don't let our kids roam anymore. And unfortunately, there are security issues. There's, as my boys call them, bad guys that we need to be concerned about, right? We live in definitely in a different world, but take those boys into the mountain, let them chase animals, let them, I could just go on and on and on, but that's another topic for another day. So, so let's stay on that topic of mental health, actually. How do these hormonal fluctuations impact mental health?
Oh my goodness.
We touched on it a little, let's not reach for the SSRI, let's reach for progesterone, but I think even getting into estrogens or testosterone in mental health, I think that's that we can talk about that as well.
Absolutely. Well, the biggest thing as far as like young women, I get concerned about is a lot of them already come to me being on birth control pills.
I'm so glad you went there. Yes.
And at that point, we've already affected their hormones. We don't know currently, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't know if what birth control pills do is they actually bind up testosterone and lower it. And for some women, that squashes their drive. Their sexual drive is squashed, which is kind of sad because we're taking them to be able to be protected so that we don't have a child and can be a little bit more free with that. And then it squashes it. We don't know if that squash, though, is long-term. And there's a lot of talk within the sexual health community is, are we able to fix that? There are ways to fix it, but we have to actually work on it. We can't just like, it's just going to bounce back. It doesn't always bounce back. So hormonally, birth control pills can do this, but the other thing that it's doing is zeroing out all the other hormones. So some of my gals still come in and they have PMS symptoms. I'll still put them on progesterone. It's not going to affect their birth control pill, but it may help them feel better. It may help them with their PMS symptoms so that they're not feeling like I have to stay away from my family for that week before my period, or I might say something I'll regret.
Right. So even if they're on synthetic progestins that is in a lot of our birth controls, they will still benefit from you're not just canceling each other out.
No.
Oh.
Yeah. So you're not going to affect the birth control. It's not going to affect the birth control pill at all as far as its effectiveness. Right. But it is going to take sort of that edge off. And there are different ways of helping with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about women that can't? Do you find women can't tolerate progesterone? The hangover effect, the
once in a great while. And sometimes it can be just the dosage, which is the beauty of why we have compounding. And I love compounding so much is because we can change those dosages, because what's conventionally available is only 100 and 200 milligrams, but that doesn't fit every patient. Right. We have some patients that benefit from like a small 25 milligram dosage, just enough to kind of take off the edge for them. And there's all different ways that we can do that. We have everything from sublingual things that go underneath the tongue. We have creams. We have pill forms that can be lower dosages. So that's why I like the compoundings, because we have an ability to adjust the dosage for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a little bit about testosterone. The two hormones, testosterone, DHEA, which we take a lot of pride in always checking DHEA in our patients, right? I don't think there's
I love it.
A lot of practitioners that do. They don't fluctuate during our cycles. Nope. They stay steady Eddie. What is the importance of those two hormones?
DHEA is our hormone that's produced by our adrenal glands. And if we're under a lot of stress, we're not going to be producing enough DHEA. So that can be any kind of stress, whether it's environmental stressors, or I always tease my teachers who come in. I'm like, usually your DHEA is low during the school year, and then during the summer, it's going to pop back up again. So kind of give them an example of how not being stressed versus being stressed is going to affect those levels. But DHEA is for memory, mood stability, and energy. And then I always say it's the 4 antis. It's anti-aging, anti-anxiety, anti-obesity, and anti-inflammatory. Oh,
I love that.
And that just, I mean, who wouldn't want that? Like, most women are like, give it to me in a Costco-sized jar.
Totally. And that's the beautiful thing. You don't need a prescription.
Nope.
It's cheap. Yep. It's safe.
Yep.
It's really easy to monitor and follow up on levels and make sure we're getting it just right. And that's another, I mean, really all of our hormones we're looking to optimize. But the amount of women, I mean, I saw a DHA level of 11 today. 11.
Doesn't that you just look at them and go, oh my God, how are you functioning?
I know. Because we're looking to get them, I don't know what you say, but most women 2 to 250.
Yeah.
200
Absolutely.
to 250, upper limit of what we call normal.
Absolutely.
To get them optimal. And it's like, oh my goodness. And DHA, so testosterone. I'll let you.
Oh, testosterone. Yeah. So testosterone is actually, DHA converts to testosterone. And so usually if we have a low DHA, we're going to have a low testosterone. But testosterone in women, I didn't realize, I'll be honest with you, I've been doing this 24 years. And I didn't realize the significant impact of losing my testosterone was going to hit me until I went through menopause myself. And I was so frustrated with my patients at that point, because I was like, girls, why weren't you telling me all these symptoms? Like all these things that I started feeling that none of them were bringing up to me.
So yours plummeted when you hit menopause?
Yes, but I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is a very high testosterone most of my life. And then when I hit menopause, it just tanked.
Oh, goodness.
ADHD symptoms.
Really?
So I couldn't focus to save my life.
Oh, wow.
And it was so frustrating, because I was like, oh my goodness, nothing is synapsing in my brain. Like I cannot keep two things together.
You probably couldn't figure out why.
No. And I was frustrated. And then finally I went, wait a second. Let's look at what is my main hormone that's dropped here. Everything else was optimized.
Yeah.
Still dealing with. I'm like, why wouldn't I benefit from a little lower testosterone? Because I have PCOS all my life, right?
Yes.
No. I was used to operating at a higher level. And that focus was just, it was like a light bulb when it, like the first time I started taking it, I was like, oh, I feel like myself again. Wow. Like I can finally focus again. But testosterone helps with our energy. It helps with our joint and tendon health. Yeah. A lot of our joint aches can be helped by getting on testosterone. Bone density can be affected by it. Skin elasticity. We're always, chasing that next bottle of something that will take care of a wrinkle on our face, but testosterone is so important in that. Testosterone for both personal and sexual drive. Right. We always talk about sexual drive with testosterone. Everybody hears about that, right? But we don't talk about the fact that we lose our personal drive. Like, am I going after that promotion at work? Do I want to go and do activities with my family?
Do I want to work out every day?
Exactly.
So exactly. You kind of lose that oomph. I see it all the time.
But then it's that will effect too. So like we lose that, then we quit exercise. Well, the exercise was also helping to keep our testosterone better. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love testosterone now.
So I'm so in your health history, thank you for sharing your personal health histories. But so your testosterone plummeted right when you went to menopause. I don't always see that. I'm always surprised. I'll sometimes see women in their 30s, testosterone is plummeted. And to be honest, I'm one of those women. Mine was so low when I got into like my mid 30s. I didn't have those same kind of symptoms, but I was shocked how low it was when I finally started to check it. And how many women actually get their testosterone checked in their 30s? Hardly any, right? Nope. But I'll check some 65-year-old postmenopausal women who still have really robust testosterones. And I can't figure it out.
Do you want to talk about that?
I do.
Okay.
Because there seems to be no rhyme or reason. I mean, the biggest reason I can come up with is probably its precursor, DHEA. My 30-something-year-old women are stressed to the hilt, working, raising children, dealing with the world, right? And so they're having that cortisol steal, and they're stealing testosterone, absolutely. But the fact that I've got some women that can go into their 60s and still have really robust. So enlighten me, dear friend. Well,
here's this is my favorite story to tell. So this happens to do with back in 2008. 2007, 2008, when Suzanne Summers and Dr. Phil and Oprah were all talking about compounded and bioidentical hormone. Oh, I did.
I'm just joking. Continue.
So everybody was hearing it, right? And so I had a group of ladies who came down from Orfino to see me. And it was a group of 5 of them, and they came down, they all just wanted their hormones checked. And I was like, well, what kind of symptoms do you have? 4 of them had no symptoms. They're all in their 60s, except for one of them who was in her 80s. And the only thing that she said was her symptom is I have a very low sex drive. And I'm like, oh, well, and we want it back?
In your 80s, I love it.
Okay, you want it? We'll work on that. And so when I tested their hormones and they came back, I was in shock. They had estrogens all between 30 to 50, which we know usually without estrogen replacement, you're not going to see that. Age, yeah. They all have beautiful testosterone levels. And again, they didn't have any symptoms. They were just wanting to do it because it was the thing that was being talked about on TV and everything, and Suzanne's books and everything. So I told them, I said, you don't need any of this. And it perplexed me for years as to why those 4 ladies did not have low levels. The other one had low testosterone, but beautiful estrogen levels. Which
the 80-year-old.
The 80-year-old. Yeah. She had a 28. I mean, it's not perfect. It's not exactly where I'd want her estrogen, 80. But her 28
it's registering.
It's registering. Yeah. It's not 0.
Right.
She had a low testosterone, replaced testosterone. She got her sex drive back, and I walked on water, according to her.
Yeah, of course.
But these ladies perplexed me. When you look at what's going on in the rest of the world, there are areas of the world that they don't do hormone replacement therapy, right? But what are they doing differently? And that's what boiled down to these ladies. What were they doing differently? They all owned farms. They all worked their farms. They were all eating their own organic produce off of their farms. The meat that they ate was the cleanest, probably, protein that you could possibly get. They were a group of ladies who were all friends. They all did things together. They had this connectedness. And 4 of them were still having sex well into their 60s. So I'm like, there are those people who are
back
out
to the
there.
Pillars. They're there. They're meeting those.
And there's got to be something to that.
Yeah.
And they were just, they were my aha moment. Those were the ones that I was like, oh my gosh, there really are people who can maintain good hormone levels that don't need replacement.
Okay, ladies, I need you all to go buy 5 acres, start a farm, raise some beef, or at least find a rancher, and have a lot of sex with your husband.
Right.
And hang out together. So quit your jobs. Start homeschooling and hang out with don't homeschool, actually. That will not help your stress. But hang out with other women. Yeah, it's an easy fix for all of us, right?
I wish it was that easy.
Be like the Orofino ladies.
Yes.
Be like them. Be
They're
like them.
Amazing.
So what are we really, you've spoken so much, and I know we're so big on, like you said, walking on water for our patients, giving them their libido, energy, lessening irritability, anxiety, depression. But I don't think what's talked about enough is some of these long-term benefits, these preventative benefits that we're seeing, right? Last time I checked, cardiometabolic disease was still the #1 killer of men and women and costing us $1 gazillion a year as a healthcare system, right? Alzheimer's is on the rise, and I see no sign of it stopping. It's its own epidemic. Type 2 diabetes, right? So what do you see, and what are we looking to aim to improve when we're treating these hormones?
The three big ones that I always talk to patients about, one, we know bone density. That's been proven over and over again. We know that we lose the most amount of our bone density during the first 5 to 7 years into menopause. And it isn't just about estrogen. It's about all the hormones. It's so very important. Yeah. And it's hard for those women who are out there who've had hysterectomies that are told they only need estrogen. That's like my biggest pet peeve. We don't want just estrogen. We are made to have a symphony of hormones. Right. And so the bone density is a given. We know that that's one. We had a hard time with the cardiovascular discussion because, of course, after the WHI study, more than 20 years ago, we scared women into going off of them. We know that we have a safer way of giving hormones, and that is by getting estrogen transdermally, something that goes through the skin, so we bypass its first little stop in the body for metabolism, not in the liver, which is where those clotting factors come from. I always tell women, I explain their blood vessels like a garden hose. Your body without estrogen is like leaving a garden hose out in the sunshine without any water going through it. It's going to stiffen. Any dirt that's in there is going to get stuck on the inside of that hose. Now, if we go and give you oral estrogen, that causes system-wide inflammation in the body. If we do that and we cause that inflammation to happen, we're going to cause a cardiovascular event to happen because that's plaques and leaks in blood vessels. But if we start estrogen replacement therapy closer to the onset of menopause, you're going to give that elastic protection to those blood vessels. And that's such an important thing for women to realize, that we want to protect your blood vessels as much as possible. Right. Starting it, we know now, if we started at the onset, that we're going to have that protective value, not waiting 10 years down the road like the WHI did, but starting at the onset. We now also have the new data on cognition, and that is so exciting to see that. New book that's out called The Menopausal Brain. I've been having a lot of patients just get the download it on Audible and listen to it. I'm hoping that at some point now with this new data that we know that it gives protection against dementia and Alzheimer's. We used to say that women were we still do. We say that women are twice as more likely to develop Alzheimer's in their lifetime. And we used to attribute it to the fact that women live longer. Well, there's areas of the world where you only live 2 years longer. That's not like 8 to 10 years, right? Yeah. But we now know that it has to do with the estrogen. This is one of those other moments where I was like, because I deal with male hormones as well, it was that little light bulb that went off, because I was like, wait a second. Testosterone being low in men, they're at a higher risk of dementia. We know that, right?
Right.
But if they have low testosterone, they have low estrogen. They go hand in hand. Well, when men are optimized on their testosterone, their estrogen levels are higher. They're like at the level that I'm trying to get my female patients at. True. So we know that it's got a protective value. I'm hoping that at some point, now that this new research is coming out from the neuroscience end of things, that they'll finally come up with like, hey, there might be this level of estrogen that's going to give us the most protection cognitively. Yeah. And that would be exciting to finally have a number, because we don't put it in conventional medicine. There's no number that's assigned to it. Right. If you're menopausal, it should be 0. And that's not optimal.
Yeah, right.
So for the cognition would be the other big part. I mean,
well, so we look at using progesterone, right? I love how you said it should be a balanced symphony. But I think we too often ignore the data on how, progesterone alone for bone health, brain health, breast protection, right? Yeah. Let's not even talk about other hormones. You're looking for a way just to calm down and protect you from breast cancer because it's in your family.
Are we scared that because of that whole thing of using the words correct, progestin versus progesterone? There's an innate difference between those two, and it's sad that we have even providers in our community that still confuse the two and scare women out of being on progesterone. And it's so important. It's such a perfect example. Women who go on estrogen replacement therapy after a hysterectomy, of course, not given progesterone, they start having migraines again. And they're like, oh my God, that estrogen caused the migraine. No, it's not your estrogen that's causing the migraine. It's the fact that you're not on progesterone that's causing your migraine. Yeah. So it's just frustrating. It's more about an education to, I think, women to know that they can demand more. They don't have to have just standard hormone replacement therapy.
Bring the research.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know, because now the research is at our fingertips, right? And we can bring that up. Or find a new provider. Right. Find a new provider.
Someone who will listen to you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So stress and sleep. How are those impacting your hormone levels?
Well, your growth hormone levels more than anything. You think of it, there's so many statistics on sleep.
Yes.
I think the one that scares me the most is a study that was done on women working night shifts. It was actually night shift nurses. They had about a 40% increased risk of breast cancer if they're awake between the hours of 1 and 2 a.m. Well, who else is awake between 1 and 2 a.m.? Probably our menopausal women. Yeah. So when you think about that, that's kind of a scary statistic, that how important is sleep. Yeah. Plus the fact that we reset our growth hormone levels. We're converting thyroid hormones during our sleep. And if you're missing that, all those good hours to kind of reboot our body to restore, and it's so important. It's also very, very important at this time in our life that if you even have an inkling of thinking that you might have sleep apnea at all, please go get it checked.
Yes.
Because we don't know, it's a chicken before the egg thing when it has to do with, does low testosterone cause sleep apnea, or does sleep apnea cause low testosterone? We don't know.
Fix both.
Fix both. Exactly.
Yeah, and you will have remarkable improvements to your health. Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. So back to the conversation we were just having about sleep and growth hormone. What's growth hormone? I think that's one, again, let's talk about things that aren't talked about enough, right? We often talk about sex hormones. Yeah.
Well, growth hormone is really, so it's kind of a taboo subject. Right. There's thousands of citations on the benefits of growth hormone. There was actually a congressional hearing on growth hormone. It's publicized out there. They saw that, hey, growth hormone, giving growth hormone, it was actually to military troop members. So
when was this?
Oh, gosh.
A while ago.
It had to have been before... I think it was presented at a 2006, 2007 conference. Cool. So it was quite some time ago. But the fact that it reversed cardiovascular disease, it helped with bone density, reversed type 2 diabetes, but we cannot prescribe it. We cannot prescribe growth hormone. Right. Not that we can't, but you'll get investigated if you're prescribing it. Right. So the new thing, which is an exciting field that we are so happy to be able to provide for patients, is looking at peptides that actually help with growth hormone levels. And growth hormone taken over a longer period of time, and that's something to have a discussion with a patient about, can help with boosting up those levels, which then in turn helps our hormones, which then in turn helps our mental outlook. It helps our body physique. It helps with some of them help with cholesterol, some of them help with sleep. My favorite one helps with skin elasticity.
What's your favorite one?
BPC 157.
Your favorite peptide.
Yes. That's my favorite peptide.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's so many that are... It's a newer field, because I don't think most people even know what a peptide is, because you see collagen peptide and you think, oh, that's a peptide.
I'm taking it. I'm
taking peptides. Yeah. It's not a peptide. It's actually, peptides are just signalers to the body to do a specific function. All we're doing is helping replace them, which is amazing medicine now, the way that we can do that and help patients even
and they're so just innate and natural to the body. And we just get to come and fine tune them.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's ways that we can, do you check IGF-1 in your patients?
I used to do a lot of it. I haven't anymore because of where I've been, but now that I'm here,
you get to do it. Yeah,
I get to do that again.
I wish there was a little bit more of a direct way to look at growth hormone, but it's a good way.
It's a good way
to see if there's and it's often not optimal.
No.
Yeah, stress, poor nutrition, environmental toxicities.
Absolutely.
All the things that will deplete you of growth hormone. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about the growth hormone peptides we chatted about them today in clinic. They're just so wonderful and so safe and so beneficial for our patients. Absolutely. But you're right, BPC 157 is a wonderful peptide, body protecting compound. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the benefits of bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. What are the risks?
That's a loaded question. I know. So here's the risk. If they're out of balance, can we cause other issues? Yes, absolutely.
There you go.
And so I always tell patients that a lot of the side effects that we deal with hormones are because we may have been out of balance with it. If you start having breakthrough bleeding, for example, do we have too much estrogen or do we not have enough progesterone? Right. Some of the side effects, we talk about the side effects of DHA. Well, the side effects of DHA aren't actually DHA that's causing the problem. It's the fact that it's converted down to dihydrotestosterone, and now we've got acne, hair loss, and hair growth in areas it shouldn't be. But there's all ways of helping those conversions in the body, and that's something that why my preference is that somebody see an actual hormone specialist that understands this, not just go pick up DHA over the counter and start taking it without actually looking at your levels and seeing if you really do need it.
Because there's a wide range of dosages that get recommended. Yeah.
Absolutely. And some of the absorption is different, as we know, from different companies and varied. I tend to usually use more compounded DHEA just because I'm kind of a control freak. I like to know exactly how much they're getting sometimes.
And exactly what's in it.
Yeah.
So you get it
Yeah. Just everybody does it just a little bit different. There are companies, though, that have really reputable DHEA. Again, just you want to be following things and making sure that somebody is actually checking your levels and not just taking it because you heard your friend was taking it, kind of a thing.
Oh my gosh, it's so true.
Because a lot of these hormones are available over the counter.
Oh, I know.
So
it's easy to get. Any risks of, I mean, what do you say? I mean, I know what you say about breast cancer and estradiol. How about testosterone replacement, even in the premenopausal woman?
You mean as far as risk of being on it?
Yeah.
Honestly, again, it goes back to dosaging. Like if you're on too much testosterone, there's going to be some problems. So if we keep things at normal, looking at where are they getting the most symptom relief and where are they not getting side effects, there's a fine balance between that. And some people don't get any side effects from it at all. But testosterone, I mean, there are a couple of patients that sometimes feel a little too edgy with it, so we decrease the dosage. Or if they get too much acne and you're like, I didn't sign on for this, well, then maybe we'll dose it. Or we can add in things to help with the metabolism of testosterone so that we can get that under control. We call those bothersome symptoms. We can get the bothersome side effects to go away usually.
I love that.
Yeah.
So good. Well, Tammy, you're just such a wonderful addition to our team and such just a voice of knowledge and wisdom and truth when it comes to female and male hormones. So we're so appreciative of that. Thank you so much for this conversation. I know it's going to be so valuable to all of our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Functional Medicine Foundation's podcast. For more information on topics covered today, specialties available at the FMI Center for Optimal Health, and the highest quality of supplements and more, go to funmedfoundations.com.